Fianna Fáil was founded by Eamon de Valera in 1926 after the group split from the anti-treaty wing of Sinn Féin. The party itself is positioned somewhere between the centre and centre-right of the political compass. They have been one of the two dominating parties in Irish politics since the establishment of the Republic. Currently at the moment they hold 37 seats in Dáil Éireann, 16 seats in Seanad Éireann, 2 seats in the European Parliament and a further 279 seats at local government level. The party itself has always been under heavy scrutiny from both the government and opposition parties. Some would describe them as the working class alternative to the Fine Gael party, whereas others would argue that the two parties are almost interchangeable. I had the pleasure of sitting down with the long-term member of both Fianna Fáil and Ógra Fianna Fáil, Brian Crehan, to gauge why he got involved in politics and chose to join Fianna Fáil.
So the first question is, what initially sparked your interest in politics?
I worked on the marriage equality campaign back in the day. It was an issue that I've always had great interest in. It was as a very democratic and kind of proud progressive-ish country from back in the day when we weren't so progressive. I thought it was all a crying shame that we didn't have marriage equality. Civil partnerships just weren't enough. I thought it had to be the full 9 yards. So I went out canvassing with them. I was leading a team in the Clane Prosperous area, which is where I'm from. And it was a great response, some not so great, which I was surprised at. But yeah, I kind of did the canvassing for the couple of weeks out in the rain, hail, not so much snow, but and as I saw the result and as I saw young people across the nation, regardless of their party, coming out and kind of marching and canvassing for this, I saw how politics could affect real change, because I think that's where young people miss out. It's a slow burner, politics. Like, you're not gonna, I put in a motion about reduced travel fees for the children of disabled parents. That wasn't even in this party manifesto for this election. Like, a couple of years down the road, when we start addressing issues going down the line, it'll happen, hopefully, but it's a slow burner. And I think marriage equality was one where you saw it just going full whack into this is happening now, after years and years of work in the background. So after that, I saw how politics could be a good kind of mechanism for change. I was in TY at the time when I started looking at the different youth wings. I read their manifestos, their policy papers, some of their pros and cons. Obviously looked at the history of them all. And then I actually went and got involved. A friend of mine was doing a bit from Public for his TY work experience, so I went and met up with some of them, did some photography and stuff for the water protest, sent it on, so I actually did have experience of working with them. They're okay people. I didn't think their policies were manageable in any way, shape or form. When you look at their manifesto, like, universal social charge, that'll leave a couple of 100 million gap there. While my party did say that we'd get rid of it, we do have we'll phase it out. It's not just in the morning we're cutting it, so they didn't have realistic policies, in my opinion. And I felt that there was the shady past that we can't get past, in terms of the Art Corlea, stuff like that. And I just felt that they weren't the party for me. I went on and worked in the Dáil with Bernard Durkin, my local Fine Gael TD, and while they were wonderful people, I had a lot of time for them. I did look at their policies, and coming from working class, rural Ireland, my own father's disabled, their policies weren't doing a lot for me. I know that might seem selfish, but I thought, people in my situation are some of the most vulnerable. My mum works in special needs, they weren't doing an awful lot like that, so I'm very aware of vulnerable parts of society. So I then kind of left that office and went on and met James Lawless, my local TD. A fantastic man, one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. I'd like to think I'm educated enough myself, but geez, I feel simple standing next to him. He's an inspiration, really, and he's young, and he's got a young family as well. So it's good to see Fianna Fáil fielding candidates who are young, working young professionals like James. And met him, looked at Fianna Fáil. My family are from Clare, so Fianna Fáil would have always been the house. Dad used to do a bit of work with Charlie McCreevy and Liam Doyle when we were in Kilcock, so it would have been there. My grandfather was diehard, but I didn't want to be your usual kind of red roaring, because I think, seeing as I have experienced the other parties, I do feel, even for myself, and if people are listening to it, I do have a bit of authority to speak on it, because I didn't go into one political party and say, well, the rest are wrong. I experienced them, so that's how I got my start. I've done interviews before for Selfridge Politics with Teresa Keegan, brilliant page. I've always encouraged young people to get involved, you know, regardless, doesn't have to be Fianna Fáil. Obviously I'd appreciate if they did, but you know, I think they're the party for me, but you know, people in different situations, it mightn't be for them, so like it's always good to get involved in politics, because you know, no point in complaining and not doing anything about it, you know.
So you mentioned the marriage referendum, and that was your initial spark and everything.
Yeah.
And then you went on to talk about how Fianna Fáil's policies and principles as well would have resonated with you a good bit. So what aspect of politics now, and in particular youth politics, keeps you involved in the political hemisphere?
Well, if you look at our manifesto, I'd be very good friends with our current president, Tom Cahill. We did an interview with Nace together actually, and we were only talking about what shape the next party manifesto would take, like, and how me and Tom are big on policy. We love it, like it's our bread and butter. But we're both on the climate change committee, and we did the Ógra Fianna Fáil climate change manifesto thing. And it was brilliant, some brilliant suggestions. Senior party didn't agree with us on all of them. But yeah, so a lot of our policies that we've actually put in over the last few years at national councils were in this general elections party manifesto, and like that's coming from, you know, a lad who was on Green Schools Committee back in TY, and now some of the policies that I've spoken on, voted on, and helped piece together now made up a party manifesto that was put out to the Irish people. Like it's you do have an impact, and it's again, as I said, like it's a slow burner. Politics, you mightn't see your motion taking shape or form initially, but like there's motions that me and Tom put in 3 years ago, and now they're in the party manifesto. I don't have the list on me right now, but it is substantial, like, you know, and it's great to have an impact like that, you know, both nationally and locally. You know, like you see a problem in society, you try fix it, that's why I think people do get involved in youth politics. Obviously there's a fun aspect, but you know, I do think we'd all be socially conscious people. Like we'd see homeless people in the streets, you know, you need only walk out the door, you see problems, you know, in terms of carbon emissions, in terms of people not being able to afford cars, in terms of needing decentralisation. And so you look at a problem and you try to find a solution, and I think youth parties can be, especially for young people, can be the mechanism to deliver on that. Because, as I said to James, we put in a motion there last year about online gambling for young people, and how there's stuff like Fortnite, Star Wars Battlefront, stuff like that. It has elements of gambling in it that older generations just aren't aware of, and I suppose it's making young people numb to the effects of gambling, you know. And it's just there'd be issues like that older people just wouldn't be aware of, you know. And it's up to young people to actually come out there and, you know, highlight them by putting emotions, even if it's just emailing your local TD. Like, you don't have to be a member of a youth wing to affect change like that, but just, you know, email your TD, say, I think this is an issue, will you do something about it? You know, it's something that young people haven't been doing, but they've been doing an awful lot more in the last few years. It's very reassuring to see. Like if we look at the education question about free education, like every party now is talking about how they're going to make education more accessible, and that's because young people are coming out, they're making their voices heard. You know, they're not just this huge gap in the electorate that just don't vote. They're making their voices heard, they're voting, and hopefully it's a trend that continues. So yeah.
So again, you mentioned bits and pieces about, you know, you talk to your local TDs, email them and whatnot, and then also about in regards to climate change and putting forward policies towards the senior party and agreeing on some and disagreeing on others. How accessible do you think politicians are to listening to the youth, both in your own party and in general as well?
Yeah, I think Irish politics, it's still very local based. You know, like if you think about it in America, like I have a couple of friends who are into politics over there, like they'd never like get left home off their senator. Like it'd be a weird dream that you'd have over there. Like you'd be considered odd even if you did. Like their politicians aren't as accessible. Like ours very much are. Like, you know, you see him at mass, you see him at the shops. You know, I kind of turned around to James the other day and I said, like, where do you shop? And he goes, Aldi. You know, fine value, you know. Little or great as well. Don't want to be endorsing anyone, but yeah, you know, so that they're very local. They're not too removed from society. Like obviously, it takes money to become a TD, unfortunately. So a lot of them are kind of people who come from a bit more money, especially in the two larger parties. You know, there's a lot of barristers, and they wouldn't be too aware of, you know, the issues that working class people are. But again, there's plenty of working class people. You know, I know James worked from nothing. He literally built himself through education, through going to college, and now he's a TD and he has a full law degree, you know. And it's funny, he was actually telling me that he could be making more money if he wasn't a TD. So I think it was a very reassuring fact, because, you know, he's in it because he cares, not because it's got a good salary. Like personally, I wouldn't say no to the TD salary, like, but you know, you're in politics because you care. And facts like that from James, you know, it's evidence of it. But yeah, I do think that they're very accessible, especially if you're in a youth wing, because, you know, you can't bait a young face on the door but doing a bit of canvassing, like, you know. But like there's plenty of them. Carl Crowe, he's a new young TD elected, a friend of mine from Clare, inspiration again to young people. I have him on Snapchat. You know, like I don't think many people in England would be able to say, oh yeah, I have my local MP on Snapchat, you know. But like even before that, like, you know, through social media, they are more kind of approachable, contactable, and you see them, you know. So I do think that your local representatives are approachable. But again, as I said, it's up to young people and people in general to make them approachable. Like, you know, we pay their salary, we elect them. You know, like, your vote is your currency. If you have an issue with your TD, go to them, even if it's a small issue. Like, it's what they're there for, you know. And I think it's a culture that has always existed. People just going to their TD and saying, look, fix this, please, thanks. And thanks to that, they do. They are very on the ground. Again, they have to be national legislators as well, but with the kind of culture of Irish politics, I think they're both local and national politicians, if you get what I'm saying. But,
yeah, so touching back again on when we mentioned marriage equality referendum, and Brian was mentioning just earlier that his reason for getting into politics was the 8th Amendment referendum.
Yeah.
And it seems to be like, what movement now, or even just a political organisation that isn't revolved around parties, could get young people involved regardless of party affiliation?
So what issue, like?
Like, what issue now would bring people together in the form of getting involved in youth politics that isn't party related?
I suppose the Students' Union is always a great one to get involved through. You know, they're very non-party political. But again, like, you're lobbying from the outside. As a member of a non-political youth kind of organisation, lobbying from the outside is always harder than lobbying on the inside. I suppose, like, you have a lot of climate change lobbyists. I wouldn't say Extinction Rebellion would be the healthiest one to get involved in, but it's the most visual, it's the most kind of noticeable. I don't agree with their protests. I agree, like, climate change is a serious emergency. I think no one's doing enough for it, but I don't think running into pennies and screaming at people is really going to make waves. I think actually getting involved, actually fielding candidates, like if you want to get climate change kind of on board, you know, join the Green Party. You know, I think it is a very defining issue of our generation. Like, you've Greta Thunberg, you know, that's a very young person, making me feel old, but out there in the national media. You know, obviously we all can't leave school. I wouldn't encourage anyone to leave school, actually, to go out protesting, but you know, I think climate change would be the big one to get involved through. But again, I encourage to join a youth wing, even if it's Sinn Féin, Labour, People for Profit youth wing. They don't have to be one of the big parties to affect change. Like, you know, most parties that do have a youth wing have a TD, and that means you have a voice in it all. And as a member of the youth wing, you can, regardless of your constituent, you can have them bring up them questions, you know. But it's a hard one. It's hard to get young people involved. because, as I said, it's a slow burner. They don't see the change immediately. So these referendums over the last few years, not only have they been very progressive and good for us as a society, but they've been really youth-backed referendums, regardless of which side you're on. It was very much you're on the ground. Like, I know it was a very resounding yes to repealing the 8th referendum, but like, it did come down to individuals. So just talking to people. I know nationally the campaign really mattered in terms of on social media and stuff like that, but I do think, similar to marriage equality, it came down to individual people and individual stories. So I think that's when one thing that has affected the boost in youth politics membership across the board, regardless of parties.
Obviously you have a big interest in politics, judging by
I
what
do.
you've been saying so far, a little bit of that.
On weekends, like.
Yeah. But obviously the question is, so as a young person now, where do you see your future going? Not just in youth politics, but in politics in general.
That's a good question. I think I answered this on a door once. Someone asked, like, would you like to see yourself as county councillor or TD? And I said, yeah, why not? It's help my community. I'm doing it anyway. TD, golly, like who would say no to 90 odd thousand a year? I don't know, but they came back with me with this rhetoric of, oh, you're like all politicians, you just want to get into power, that's all you want. And I said, no, I got into politics to affect positive change in my society, and being a legislator, county councillor, TD, senator, that's the best way to do it. Did you ever try to drive a car without getting into it? That's the thing. To affect this change, the best way of doing it is to get into power. For me personally, I'd love it. I'd live and breathe politics. I spent the last week at Ógra events discussing different policy roadshow events with our policy director, Andrew McFadden, Lean Bolger down in Cork. I love it. I just have passion for it. I wish more young people have a passion for it. So, like, in terms of county council, we have a couple of years to go before the next elections. I was a campaign manager in the last local elections for Brian Larkin, who unfortunately didn't get in, but another young-ish person who it was great. He got a phenomenal first preference result, but he just didn't make it over the line. But a terrific candidate, and I'd say I might get a panic text off him if I commit to running next time, saying who's going to manage it next time. But no, look, I won't rule it out. In terms of TD, look, it's a hard job. I'm 21 years of age. Like James O'Connor down in Cork, he's now the youngest TD in the Dáil. Very good friend of mine, very fond of him, but it's an inspiration. But again, a lot of it's to do with geography, a lot of it's to do with the kind of political climate, whether there's an appetite for young people in politics. We've got a lot of young TDs in Dáil Éireann now. It'll be, I think, the next locals, maybe the next general, could depend on their performance in the Dáil. Could not, mightn't affect it. Like, we saw most of the Fianna Fáil TDs that got returned this time were, I would say, on personal votes, based on their own personal performance as a TD, not as a person, as in, they know everyone, because I think nationally, people who are relying on Fianna Fáil votes, they didn't get in. We lost some terrific people. John Curran out in Lucan down the road, a great man, my own constituency, Frank O'Rourke, but we also gained some terrific people. Carl Crowe, that's one, James, and a number of other candidates who've been, going at it and, going heavy at the campaign trail. And I think and they've been working in their communities regardless, whether they were councillors or just laymen like myself. So I'd love to do it. Maybe I will. I'd be happy to have you out canvassing with me, Odrin, if I do. But I think we might differ in opinions in terms of parties. But look, yeah, I'd never rule it out. Look, my dad was approached back in the day. He said he'd always regretted not running. So like I say I will run eventually, but it'll all depend on the climate, the geography. Like, that's a big thing. Boundaries redrawn. Like, I grew up in Kilcock. I know plenty of people in there. Went to school there, but then I do the Colfus in Clane. My dad teaches there too, and I live in Prosperous now for the last few years. So like that used to be the one constituency, so now it's Clane, and then you've Maynooth. They used to be the one, so like I'd have faces in both. So like at the time, I didn't know, just running, like, you know. So if somehow they throw Clane into South Kildare, no way. there's no way I'll be able to run then. Like, but it all depends. Look, maybe not. I know the party are shouting out to get feet on the ground now. We're rebuilding the party. Since we didn't get the best result, they're hoping to fill some LAR positions, local area representatives. They'll be filled in the next while, hopefully now. Well, that's what the party are calling out for. So perhaps I will. I'll get back to you anyway. I'll tag you in my campaign announcement.
Obviously, you seem kind of, you know, like you'd be up for it if the opportunity came around and whatnot. But a lot of the people, you know, especially younger people, when they're asked if they want to get involved in politics, and not just with the big parties, but the smaller parties as well, there's this sort of abrasive nature to want to get involved in, because it is such a cultural shift for an individual to have to go from being a private individual to a public person. Like, obviously now a lot of people aren't thinking about, you know, 10 years down the road if they're going to run for council, or 20 years down the road if they're ever going to try and be a TD.
Yeah.
But the question still remains then, what is it that, you know, stops individuals from a young age saying, yes, I want to be a TD, yes, I want to be a councillor?
Having helped run a general election campaign and a local campaign, I lost about a stone. I'm pretty sure I developed some weird form of insomnia where I actually enjoyed being out at night, knocking on doors, annoying people, and not sleeping and being up early. Like, you know, me James, like, he's one of the heaviest canvassers I've ever come across. Like, and he somehow goes into a canvass tired and comes out energized. He must be some kind of freak of nature, but no, like it's a hard graft. You know, you're talking, if you win an election on a Monday, you're working towards the next one on a Tuesday. You know, you don't get days off. Like, even for me, I do a bit of work with James locally in Staplestown, Dundee, Prosperous, Clane. You know, we've got terrible flooding issues. And like, I have people ringing me about 1 a.m. saying, yeah, I can't get out. I can't get in my gate. My driveway's completely flooded. Will you get onto the council? You know, so like, and that's me. I'm a layman, just involved in the party. Like, I can't imagine the amount of phone calls that James gets, that Nisha Carroll and Maynooth gets. You know, it's a hard job. It's even harder to get it going. Like, unless you have a base in a place. Like, I know Paul Ward, one of our terrific councillors in Kilcock. I know he started off in Selbridge as a possible candidate there, and but he moved to Kilcock. He's from Tala originally. You know, he built it from the ground up through hard work. Like, thankfully, I've lived in Kildare 21 years. Proud of it, love it. Best county in the world, in my opinion. But you know, it's hard for people coming to new areas and building it up from the ground up. That's why I think if people give out about dynasty family politicians, like I don't think it's healthy to you know join a party just because dad's in it, like, or run just because dad ran. But I can see where it happens, because you're out there, your name is known, you're going to the events, you're working with the community through your parent or whatever. So like, there's that aspect of it. Like, my family wouldn't be from Kildare at all now. We're Blowins. So like, any kind of image we have has been built over the last 21 years. Whereas if people who are there 4 generations, like, you know, everyone and their dog knows them, like, no. So and it can be sometimes a thankless job, you know, and it can get vicious. It can get very, very vicious. I only brought it up last night with John Lee. He was doing an event out in Trinity College with Cormac Devlin, another terrific young TD. I said there's this trend now at the moment we're seeing where people's pasts are being dug up, even prior to them even considering joining a political party. So like, One would be really Cronin in my area. She was labelled an anti-Semite from tweets from about 20 years ago. Well, not 20 years. Was there Twitter 20 years ago? But you know, from ages ago, prior to her election. Like, personally, I don't agree with Rita in the majority of things, policy-wise, with Sinn Féin, obviously. But like, I don't think that anyone's name should be dragged through the dirt. Like, obviously there were severe tweets against Jewish people. You know, they've suffered, God, so much. It's terrible. But like, we have to weigh up. Like, are we going to judge people on tweets from 15 years ago, 20 years ago? Because we're me and you, like, we grew up. Even more so, like younger people who are in 6th class now, they're growing up in the age of social media. So like, your opinions from when you're 11 onwards are there forever. They're very hard to get rid of. Like, I know, I'm sure I've said some stuff that I wouldn't exactly be proud of back when I was 11. Like, you know, but we all do. Like, and I think it's going to, if we do continue down this path, it'll breed this horrible kind of mutant of a sociopath nearly, who decided when they were 14, you know, I shall go for county council in 10 years time and I shall not say anything on social media till then, you know. But like, we have to experience life, and you can't be worrying, you know, 20 years down the road if I decide to run, is that, oh Jesus, I remember I called Patrick Jackman, I called him a thick Egypt. Oh God, I wonder will that come up now on the campaign trail, you know. It's something we have to weigh up. Like, obviously we all have a duty as basic, decent human beings not to say hurtful things online. But we also, you know, 20 years ago is 20 years ago, you know. Even if we look at the Eighth Amendment, I wasn't really involved. I disagreed with both sides, but like, at the start of it I had one opinion, and then at the end of it I had a completely different opinion, just from gaining knowledge. You know, I suppose I grew up as a person through the campaign, from speaking to canvassers and stuff, and on social media. So like, people's opinions change. You know, they say stuff they don't mean, they do stuff they don't mean. But like, I honestly don't think people should be judged on stuff unless they're involved in politics at the time. Like, I know there's certain general election candidates who are serving on certain committees in political parties. I won't say who, but they made comments when they were elected to party positions. And like, across the board, I don't think it's acceptable to say those sort of things, because if I go out with my canvassing hat on, I'm representing Fianna Fáil. If I'm uncourteous to someone on a door, that's Fianna Fáil being uncourteous to someone. When I'm working in politics, I am kind of unofficially and officially representing the party because I'm a member. So things that I do, I suppose they could be scrutinised, less so as a young person, because I'm a layman. As I said, I do PRO for my county CTC, but that's about it. You know, so I think that there's an awful lot of scrutiny, and it's an unhealthy trend. So, and I think it scares young people, you know, because like I can't remember which, but like, if someone says, oh geez, my pen's after going missing, you immediately think, Jesus, did I take that? You know, there is that kind of paranoia, you know, and young people are scared by it. So I think we need to maybe change our mind on politics. I could be wrong. Like, you know, maybe it is healthy that people get judged tweets from ages ago. But, you know, that'll be the main barrier I find, is that it's very hard, and that you're scrutinised for years before you even had notions of it. Like, so yeah, I suppose that'd be it. Yeah.